I'm 85 years old, and life went by faster than I ever imagined. Hi, I am Harold Johnson, and if you want to learn some wisdom from an old man who's still young at heart, when I say life went by faster than I ever imagined, I don't mean that in some poetic, metaphorical way. I mean it literally. I cannot account for the time. It's gone, decades just gone. And I've spent the last few years trying to figure out where it all went, how I ended up here at 85 feeling like I was just 30, and then suddenly I wasn't anymore. Here's what I think nobody tells you when you're young. Time doesn't feel like it's passing when you're enjoying it. You think you have all the time in the world, and then one day you look up from whatever you're doing and you're old, and you can't remember most of it. When I was 20, I couldn't wait to be 30. I thought 30 was old. 30 meant you had your life figured out. 30 meant you were done growing and learning. 30 was the finish line. I spent my entire 20s in a state of perpetual not yet. Not yet ready, not yet successful, not yet living the real life. The real life was on its way, I was sure. It was waiting for me on the other side of 30. Then I hit 30 and everything was still uncertain, so I moved the goalpost. 35, that's when things would fall into place. That's when I'd have money, stability, direction. That's when life would begin. At 35, I was still figuring it out, still saying, not yet, still convinced that the real life was coming just a little further down the road. So I said 40. 40 is when you're supposed to know who you are. 40 is when you're supposed to have it all together. I spent 5 years from 35 to 40 working toward that moment, convinced that at 40, everything would click into place and I'd finally get to live. I hit 40, and I was still the same confused person, just 5 years older and with more responsibilities. And that phrase, a fool at 40, had a new meaning. But here's the thing, I didn't really notice it happening. The time, it just moved. I was busy, work was consuming everything. I had kids by then, and they required attention. There were bills to pay, houses to maintain, careers to climb. Every single day was urgent. Every day felt like there was something that needed to be done right now, something that couldn't wait. And so I didn't wait. I did those things. I worked the long hours. I made the compromises. I said yes to obligations. I said no to things that seemed less important at the moment. But then it was 1995, then it was 2000, then it was 2010, then it was today. 45 years just evaporated. When you're in your 20s, a year feels like forever. A year is 10% of your entire life at that point. It feels significant. A year can change you. A year is meaningful. When you're 85, a year is like a breath. It's gone before you process it. You blink and a year has passed. You were just dealing with New Year's resolutions and suddenly it's November again. I have a friend who's 87. We were talking about this and he said something that stuck with me. He said, when you're young, you're always waiting for something to start. When you're old, you realize it already ended. And I think about that all the time now. I was always waiting for my real life to begin. And while I was waiting, my real life was actually happening. My kids were growing up, my parents were getting older, my body was changing, my opportunities were narrowing, my time on earth was decreasing. And I was so focused on some future version of my life that I completely missed the present one. My oldest daughter is 53 now. When I think about her childhood, the memories that come to mind are thin and scattered. I remember a few specific moments, a birthday party, a school play, a vacation, but there are entire years that are just blank. Entire years where she was living and growing and becoming herself, and I'm not really there in my memory of it. Not because I wasn't physically present, I was, but I was there in body while my mind was somewhere else. I was there stressed about work. I was there thinking about the next project, the next deadline, the next milestone. I was there but not actually there. And then she was 18, and then she was done with college, and then she was married, and then she had her own kids, and I realized that her childhood is over. That phase is done. I can't get back to it. When my children were young, people used to say to me, enjoy these years, they go so fast. And I'd smile and nod because I was exhausted. I didn't have time to enjoy them. I was too busy trying to provide for them, trying to build something, trying to get to the next level. I wish I could go back and tell that younger version of myself, stop, just stop. Those years are the actual life. The building you're doing, the climbing you're doing, the achievement you're chasing, that's not real life. Real life is your 5-year-old sitting next to you at breakfast. Real life is your wife laughing at something stupid on TV. Real life is a Sunday afternoon with no plans. That's it. That's the whole thing. But I didn't see it. I was looking through it towards something else. My parents lived into their 80s. I had time with them, but not as much time as I thought. I remember when my dad got sick, it felt sudden. We went from him being relatively healthy to him being in a hospital bed in what felt like a few months. But the truth is, he'd been getting older for years. There were signs, he'd been slowing down. I just hadn't been paying attention because I was in the middle of my own life, running my own race. After he died, I realized there were so many conversations I never had with him, so many questions I never asked, so many ordinary moments I didn't cherish because I thought there would be more of them later. Here's what I think is the biggest con that time pulls on you: the belief that there's going to be a later when you finally get to do the things you want to do. When I was 30, I was going to travel when I was 40. When I was 40, I was going to travel when I was 50. At 50, I finally took some trips, but they were rushed. I was still thinking about work. I still had obligations. I couldn't fully relax, and I wasted some of that travel being stressed about getting back. Now I'm 85 and I can finally travel whenever I want. I don't have work obligations. I have time. But my body doesn't move the way it used to. I get tired more easily. Some of the trips I dreamed about aren't physically possible anymore. The dream is still there, but the vessel isn't equipped to receive it. That's the thing about later. Later always comes, but it comes with a catch. I was going to read more when I had time. I have time now, but my eyes aren't as sharp. Reading feels like work. I don't read nearly as much as I thought I would. I was going to spend more time with friends and family when I wasn't so busy. I have time now, but some of those friends are dead. Some have moved away, some have drifted into different orbits, and the ones who are still around, they're busy. They have their own lives, their own obligations, their own nots yet. I was going to take up hobbies, start that thing I always wanted to start, learn that skill I always talked about learning. I have time now. But learning isn't as easy anymore. My mind isn't as sharp. My energy isn't as abundant. What seemed like it would be a natural, easy thing to do in my younger years is now a harder climb. This is what nobody tells you. The thing you're waiting for isn't just waiting for you at a later date. It's also changing. It's degrading. It's becoming less accessible. And the version of you that's going to experience it is also changing. You're becoming someone different, someone older, someone with less energy, less time, less capacity. The person at 50 who finally has time to travel isn't the same person who dreamed about traveling at 30, and the experience isn't the same, and the body that has to do the traveling isn't the same. So when you're telling yourself later, you're not actually saving the experience for later, you're canceling it. You're just refusing to admit it. When I tell young people that life goes by fast, they think they understand, but they don't. They can't, because they're experiencing time at a completely different speed than I am. When you're 20, a decade away feels like forever. You have time. When you're 80, a decade away feels like a few years. A decade is the distance between today and when you'll probably be dead. I used to plan things 5 years in advance. I don't do that anymore. If I want to do something, I do it now, because I don't know if there will be a 5 years from now. I probably will, but I don't know. And I've learned not to bet my experiences on things I don't know. One of the cruelest things about getting old is that people disappear. Your friends die, your parents die, your siblings die. People who were constants in your life, who you assumed would always be there, they just aren't anymore. When you're young, death feels like an abstract concept. It happens to other people. It happens to people in movies. It doesn't happen to people you know in any meaningful way. Then you get older and it happens, and it keeps happening. At some point when you're older, you stop counting forward. You start counting backward. Instead of I'm 85, you start thinking I have maybe 10, 15 years left, maybe less, maybe more if I'm lucky. It's a strange shift. It changes the way you see everything. When you have unlimited time, you can afford to waste it. You can spend a day doing nothing productive. You can skip a year of connection with someone because you're busy. You can put off important conversations. You can tell yourself there's always more time. When you know there isn't unlimited time, everything becomes more urgent, not anxious urgent, but significant urgent. I used to play golf every week for years. I loved it. But golf takes 4 hours. 4 hours out of my week, every week. At a certain point in my life, I decided I didn't have time for golf. I had more important things to do. I had work, family obligations, things that felt more pressing. I haven't played golf in 5 years, and I regret it, not because golf is the most important thing in the world, but because it was something I enjoyed, something that brought me peace, something that was just for me, and I gave it up for things that seemed more urgent, for things that I thought mattered more. Now that I'm older and I do have time, I don't have the knees to play golf the way I used to. That's the irony. You get the time you always wanted, but you can't use it the way you imagined you would. I try to tell young people this, and they don't believe me. They think they're different. They think they won't make these mistakes. They think when they finally have time and money and freedom, they'll travel and pursue their passions and spend time with loved ones. But life doesn't work that way. Life works by accumulation. You accumulate obligations, you accumulate patterns, you accumulate people who depend on you. And by the time you have freedom, the patterns are so entrenched that you don't know how to do anything else. I have a friend who retired at 60. He swore he was going to travel, write a book, and spend time with his grandkids. He's 75 now. He's been retired for 15 years, and he spent most of those 15 years working on his house, managing his investments, and watching TV. The things he thought he'd do when he had time, he didn't do them. Because you don't just automatically change who you are and how you spend your time because you have more of it available. Habits are stronger than circumstances. I think the reason time goes so fast is that we outsource our attention to things that matter less. When you're a kid, time is slow because you're present. You're not thinking about tomorrow. You're not planning next week. You're just living. And because you're fully present, you notice things, you remember things. The time sticks. But somewhere in your 20s or 30s, you start outsourcing your attention to work, to ambition, to climb ladders that don't actually lead anywhere meaningful, to phones and screens and constant low-level stimulation that prevents actual presence. And once you start that, once you let your attention get stolen by urgent things that aren't actually important, it's very hard to get it back. The days that felt long when I was young were days where I was actually present, days at the beach with my family, days where I was just hanging out with friends, days where there was nothing to do and nowhere to be. The years that went fastest were years where I was so busy, so focused on productivity, so consumed with what was coming next, that I wasn't really living the years I was in. And nobody tells you this is happening while it's happening. It feels normal. It feels like everyone's doing it. It feels like it's the price of being a responsible adult, but it's not. It's a choice. And I chose it over and over. And now I'm 85 and I'm trying to remember what it felt like to be present because it's harder now. The window for being present is earlier in life, when you still have energy, when your body still works well, when there are more years ahead of you. And most of us waste that window chasing things that don't matter. There's only one thing I've found that actually slows time down, and it's being present. It's full, complete, undistracted presence. When I'm with my grandkids and I'm not thinking about anything else, time moves differently. An afternoon feels long. A conversation feels meaningful. It feels like time is something again, not just something that's happening to me. When I'm reading a book that I'm completely absorbed in, time disappears. Hours pass, and they feel like minutes, but also like they happened, like I was there. When I'm doing something that requires my complete attention, learning something new, having a deep conversation, experiencing something I've never experienced before, time becomes real again. Those are the days that stick in my memory. Those are the moments that feel like they matter, and they matter because I was actually there, because I wasn't thinking about the next thing, because I wasn't outsourcing my attention to something else. But I didn't do enough of that. I was too busy, too focused on productivity, too convinced that real life was coming later. And now I'm 85 and I have time and I try to be present now, but it's harder. My brain is used to dividing its attention. My body gets tired more easily, and I'm acutely aware that there isn't much time left to practice being present. If I could go back to my 30-year-old self, I wouldn't tell him to stop working. I wouldn't tell him to just slack off and ignore his responsibilities. But I would tell him this: the time you're trying to create by working hard, by achieving things, by building towards some future, That time is a fantasy. The actual time is right now. It's today. It's this conversation with your kid. It's this quiet moment with your wife. It's this ordinary Tuesday that you're rushing through to get to some extraordinary future that may or may not come. Stop. Notice. Be here. Because life is going by faster than you can imagine. Not someday. Right now. If you're under 40 right now, I'm telling you, you think you have time. You don't. Not really. Not the way you think you do. The time between 20 and 40 feels like forever when you're 20. But it isn't. It's a blink. It's a breath. It goes before you know it. And the things you're waiting to do, the life you're waiting to live, the connections you're waiting to make, don't wait. I'm not saying don't work hard. I'm not saying don't have ambitions. I'm not saying don't build something. But I am saying don't sacrifice the actual life for the imaginary one. Don't trade the presence you have now for a future that may not come the way you think it will. Call your parents, not someday, this week, not to ask them for anything, just to talk, just to be present with them, because they're getting older every single day, and one day they won't be here, and you'll think about all the calls you didn't make. Be present with your kids, not perfectly, not all the time, just actually be there sometimes, not thinking about work or money or the next thing. Actually here, do the thing you keep saying you'll do later, not when you have more money, not when you have more time. Now, in whatever form you can do it now, because later comes and it's never what you thought it would be. Stop waiting for your real life to begin. This is it. This is the real life. It's happening right now, and you're missing it because you're looking through it towards something else.